A federal program created by the Biden administration aimed at reversing a long-standing history of economic discrimination against black farmers is now on hold. The loan forgiveness program was part of the most recent COVID-19 relief bill. Advocates say it was an opportunity to help thousands who have been disadvantaged by decades of unfair treatment. But a conservative law firm in Wisconsin argued the program was unconstitutional because white farmers are not eligible. Now, a federal judge in Wisconsin has issued a temporary restraining order to halt the loan forgiveness. For more on this, I want to bring in Natalie Baszile. She is the author of We Are Each Other's Harvest, Celebrating African-American Farmers, Land, and Legacy. Natalie, it's so great to talk to you. I've read your work. It's really remarkable. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this debt relief for black farmers, which has faced backlash from banks who said it would deprive them of expected profits. The banks even suggested that they might be reluctant to extend credit to those seeking USDA guaranteed loans in the future, which will leave these black farmers worse off in the long run. So what does that tell you about the state of discriminatory practices in the U.S. government against black farmers specifically?
Well, what it tells us is that on behalf of banks, they really are only interested in continuing to prey upon black farmers. You know, all of this conversation, the legislation that has passed to issue relief to black farmers is really meant to address the historic system of discrimination that has been strategically deployed to disenfranchise black farmers. These practices have been going on for generations, and this was the first attempt from the Biden administration to actually do something to relieve these black farmers and help them to dig out from under do something to help them dig out from the decades of debt that they have incurred because of these discriminatory practices that they've been targeted on behalf of the USDA.
You know, I think the whole country had been talking just a few weeks ago about the Tulsa riot and how black wealth was stolen in a very illegal way, and no one was ever held accountable. And that certainly happened with black farmers. But what's worse is what we are talking about is the legal ways in which the government was able to take land from farmers. So it's really hard to get any resolution when it's perfectly within the law. Can you talk about sort of historically the way the industry has marginalized black farmers and how that marginalization continues to have an impact today? You know, when we talked about Tulsa, we talked about, you know, a black-owned movie theater that just, you know, no longer existed. And maybe, you know, fast forward 100 years, you might have a black-owned movie chain that was never allowed to exist. So can we talk about just kind of the fallout of decades and decades of systemic I guess, for lack of a better word, of systemically removing black farmers from their land?
Absolutely. So really since the 1920s, when black farmers were at their peak, there were almost 1 million black farmers in this country. But at the same time, the USDA, which is a government agency that was created to assist farmers, that agency on the local level, all across the South, had agents in these rural offices who were deploying discriminatory practices that were preventing black farmers from moving forward. So what does that mean? When black farmers would go to apply for loans in their local USDA offices, those loans were often torn up when they would go in to apply for those loans. If the loans were granted, if they weren't denied, the loan payments were delayed, which meant that black farmers and farmers of color weren't able to get the funds at the beginning of the planting season that would allow them to begin their farming practices. Often when black farmers farmers or farmers of color needed those loans in January or February at the beginning of the beginning of the planting season, they didn't get that money until March or even as late as August. So what this meant, decade after decade after decade, Black farmers were not able to plant their crops on time, which meant they weren't able to harvest their crops on time. And when you can't harvest your crop on time, that means that you don't have the money to repay the loan. That's not the fault of the farmer. These were systematic practices that were deployed in order to basically set up Black and brown farmers for failure. When that happens decade after decade after decade, there's a cascading effect. This is why Black farmers and farmers of color are so far behind. This is why they have the debt that they have. Oftentimes, Black farmers and farmers of colors were also forced to borrow more money than they could afford, not because they wanted to, but because this is what was required of them on the local level. These were all practices that were systematically deployed to disenfranchise Black farmers, which led to massive land loss. There used to be a point where Black farmers owned 14 million acres of land in this country. Now that number has dwindled down to less than 2%. So when we think about Tulsa, we think about how there was intergenerational wealth in that community that was robbed, right? The same thing has happened to Black farmers, because if you don't have a farm to pass on to the next generation, you are robbing these people of an opportunity to pass this wealth on. And this is a large part of the reason why this money, this assistance, this bailout on behalf of the Biden administration was so crucial and why it's so important.
You know, it's so remarkable and striking to hear you set the context for us and our viewers, Natalie, because as you know, and Anne-Marie, you know, in this country, there's always been a celebration or you know, when we talk about farmers in the United States, they are not only celebrated, they're lauded. We're supposed to respect and love and you know, give adoration to our farmers. It's always there's always been a PR campaign around that. And yet, when you talk about the numbers, 14 million acres of land whittled down to 2%. And now this legislation, the Justice for Black Farmers Act, that was introduced earlier this year, the legislation would, in fact, create policies to end the discrimination that you're talking about here and prevent further land loss. I mean, some may argue that the land should be given back, but let's start here with ending the discriminatory practices and the erosion of land loss. And yet there has been pushback. So what should our viewers do who are looking to perhaps signal to their lawmakers that they want to see a resolution to this do? And what is the pushback from others?
Well, the pushback really comes on behalf of a small number of white farmers. There are 12 white farmers who have joined forces and are represented by a law firm in Wisconsin that is claiming reverse discrimination because they feel that they are entitled to apply for these funds, but these funds are meant to address this long history of discrimination against Black and brown farmers and indigenous farmers. But this lawsuit is claiming reverse discrimination, which is really infuriating because when you think about all the ways that white farmers, even as recently as the previous administration, benefited from bailout funds. In the last administration, the money that was given to farmers in this country as a result of the trade war, 98% of that money went to white farmers. This bill under Biden is meant to address the historic practices, the historic discrimination that has been deployed against farmers of color, Black farmers. So it's really frustrating to hear this to witness this backlash and to see the way people to create additional barriers when all Biden is trying to do is address what has happened in the past and finally clear the field and relieve these farmers of some of the debt that they have been carrying for generations. What can people do? People can call their legislators, they can call their congressmen and their senators and express their outrage, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to right the wrongs of the past.
Natalie, I'm really glad that you joined us. People may know your name from Queen Sugar, and so I got to give you a shout out for that as well. You know, there's so much more that we could talk to you about. We didn't even get to sort of heirs' rights, which is the legal way in which the judicial system has been used to remove black farmers from their land. We could go on and on and on. Natalie Baszile, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.